Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Valpo Athletics Weekly. Brandon Vickery with you. Glad to be joined by the Director of Track and Field and Cross Country at Valpo, Vincent Walker, as we get set for the 2024 MVC Cross Country Championships coming up on Friday. And Vinny, as we talk about your team this season, I want to start with the standout newcomer on the women's side, Leticia Rolt. How impressive has Leticia been throughout her first year in your program? What has stood out to you about her this season?
Yeah, she's been absolutely incredible for us. It's always hard for someone coming in and transferring like that. And, she's been through three different training styles in the last 2 years. And, when your world's getting turned upside down every couple months as you're trying to, build mileage and do these different workouts and work with different coaches, you never know what you're going to expect. And for her, I think a lot of her success is she's just bought in. When we were recruiting her, like I kind of gave her a vision of where I think she can be and how we're going to do it and how we're going to get her there. And she's been tried and true to that plan the whole way and hasn't been scared to, come and make little adjustments as we need. But she's just a fierce competitor too. I mean, she's someone who looks forward to racing the moment her meet is over and she crossed that line. The first thing she always says is like, all right, when's the next one, right? Like when can we get going again? And she truly is just a workhorse. I mean, she's not afraid to put the mileage in. She's not afraid to hit the really hard workouts and reps. And we kind of joke, we always say she's just a hoot because she'll be the first to tell you, like, after I read the workout, her face like drops down. She's like, Coach, there's no way I can do that. And then she ends up running faster than I wrote. And I'm like, no, 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 like let's hold the reins back a little bit, right? We don't want to leave our best race out here. So she kind of gets a bad rep sometimes for maybe complaining a little bit, but more in a joking way. So she's just awesome to have around.
Who else on the women's side has stood out to you, and who has a chance for breakout performance or a big time on Friday?
Yeah, the big two for me that have kind of been a little dark horse for us this year is both Vivian and Kenzie, right? They've been right there with each other. And I think what's going to help us be really successful this weekend is if they can find each other earlier in the race, right? They always seem to find each other kind of late, but the way both of them have just been training and developing this year has been awesome. For Vivian, who's, now a little bit more veteran in our young group and has kind of had 1 year of experience and she's done a really good job of leading the group and showing the girls like, hey, this is our expectation when it comes to easy runs, how we prepare for workouts, how we carry ourselves on race day. And, we've seen a lot of growth from her. I think she's had almost like a 30 or 40-second PR from this year to last year. And, I think she's just scratching the surface. Like, if you ask her, I think every race she's had has been good, but it like hasn't been what she was hoping for. And she's just absolutely ready for that big day. And I think you'll see another really big drop between conference and regionals as well, with those remaining two 6Ks. And then Kenzie's been right there on her heels, working out with her and really learning from her. And it's just been, you know, really, really well for transitioning to the 6K. I think sometimes it's hard mentally when you go from running 5K in high school and now all of a sudden your workload's a little bit more intense, the academic workload's a little bit more intense. It can really affect training, and Kenzie's been there to just plug along the whole way. And I think the same thing, you'll see her kind of crack that 23 barrier here in the next 2 weeks. So I'm excited about that.
Men's side, Joseph Shaley has continued to make positive strides. What stood out to you about his season?
Yeah, I think for him, since he's been here, he's always had that pressure of having to be like our fifth guy as a freshman, right? And then last year, he had, two pretty strong upperclassmen to kind of lead the way and learn from. But, being a young team, all of a sudden you lose some of that experience really quick. And I think for him over the summer, we had some conversations that's like, hey, like there's no one that's gonna bail us out anymore, right? Like you got to be the guy. And if there's one thing I can say about Joseph throughout his whole career, he's kind of been in this pressure filled situation, has been a guy who can rise to the occasion, right? And now as he's kind of stepped into more of that leader role for the men's group, he's just grown in his career even more from an athletic standpoint, right? And I think when he's cast to be the leader of that group, it puts a lot of pressure on himself to like, hey, like I have to perform well so that these guys can learn from me and see what I'm doing and fight even harder in a race, right? So Joseph's just done an incredible job this year, and even watching him work out, he just looks like a completely different guy. He seems more confident in himself, and I think a big part of that too is just coming off of the big spring. I mean, the outdoor MVC championships for him to run 352 and 916 in the steeple, like that was a pretty intense double, and I think he walked away from it going, all right, I can be at that next level, and I can find myself as a top guy in this conference, and he's hungry for it. So I'm excited to see where he goes.
I wanted to ask you about Carson Hollander as well. How has he progressed from the time he came in as a freshman a year ago to now?
Yeah, I think a big thing for Carson is that he's just holds himself to a really high standard. And, coming in as a freshman, he had some big shoes to kind of fill for some of the goals he set for himself. And I think he had a great freshman year. But if you talk to him, he'd probably kind of scratch his head a little bit and be like, yeah, I was hoping for a little bit more, right? And going into the summer this year, like we ramped his mileage up a little bit more. He set these big goals out of like, hey, like I know I'm gonna have to be a top guy for the team. I know I'm gonna have to pull my weight. And he came out of the gate swinging. I mean, that first 8K we had at Illinois State, I think he was like 47 seconds faster than his previous best time at the distance and cracked 25 in his first race of the season. And that's kind of like that big gorilla on the men's side. Is like once you get that sub 25 like off your back, I think now you can start to push the envelope a little bit in training and do these things that are going to help you continue to progress. So he's just a guy who's hungry and willing to put the work in and put his head down and is always chomping at the bit to do more. And as a coach, that you enjoy coaching athletes like that because you don't have to like try to get them fired up, right? He does a good job of firing the team up. And, if anything, I got to try to like pull the reins back with that group a little bit. And for me, I'd rather do that than be like, oh, come on, guys, like let's get going. Let's be excited to work out. So Carson's just been awesome with that as well.
What are some other thoughts on the men's team entering Friday? What do you have to do as a team to be successful in the championship?
Yeah, that's the big $1 million question that we've really kind of struggled with this year is we've had a plan. I think we've just struggled to implement a little bit, especially in some of these bigger fields. We've had a harder time finding each other, like at pre-nats and Mizzou. And I think this year we knew we might take a little step back, losing some big firepower, but we know that, the biggest thing we're lacking is experience, right? I think the potential is there for us to have a lot of big meets and big success with this young group. So the biggest thing for me is just finding each other out there. I think Carson and Joseph have to be able to find each other early and good out. With a smaller field, it's harder to build through a race because bigger gaps are going to develop. So they're going to have to get out early, get themselves in kind of that top group, and try to build from there. As to where then some of our younger guys like Brooks and Tim and Tyler, those guys are going to have to find each other, right away, which they've kind of struggled with in the past. They did a really good job of doing it at pre-nats, and then we kind of fell apart 2K in. I think some of that was just nerves getting to people, being in that big field. If those three can stick together and get in a good spot, kind of in the middle of that group, and work together to build, I mean, I think we're going to shock some people. I think a lot of people are counting us out because we're just young and counting on a lot of freshmen, but I mean, this group is so talented and ready for that big day. So we can, get out of our heads mentally and find each other early, then people are going to be shocked what the Beacons can do.
There he is, the director of track and field and cross country here at Valpo, Vincent Walker. His cross country program competing in the conference championships this weekend, hosted by UNI in Cedar Falls, Iowa. For all the latest on Valpo cross country this weekend, you can visit valpoathletics.com. Talk to you again next time on Valpo Athletics Weekly, presented by Lakeshore Bone and Joint Institute.